Welcome to Way Too Late Reviews. Whether you're doing some sale shopping or just looking for a new game that happens to be old, this is the place for you. The way this works is I take my sweet time completing a game, and then I give you my honest opinion and review of said game. Light spoilers ahead. Today we're going to be looking at Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Made by Respawn Entertainment and published by EA, it's only EA's third Star Wars game since they acquired the license to make Star Wars games back in May of 2013, and its first main story game for the franchise. With the disastrous launch of Battlefront 2 in 2017, fans of the Star Wars games were already calling for Disney to revoke the license, so there was a lot of pressure on EA to really hit this one out of the park. Did they? Well, let's find out. So, quick summary. In Fallen Order, you play as Cal Kestis, a former Jedi apprentice who survived Order 66 and is now working as a scrapper on the planet of Bracca. He's more or less settled into this way of life until one day the Empire shows up looking for a Jedi fugitive. You. Cal narrowly escapes from Bracca with the help of former Jedi and fellow Order 66 survivor Seer Junda, as well as Grease Dritus, a pilot with a gambling problem and penchant for cooking. With this crew, you'll venture across 8 different planets, with 5 of them being truly explorable, fight numerous enemies from stormtroopers to inquisitors to giant spiders, and discover your various Force abilities during your quest to find a holocron containing the names of the rest of the Force-sensitive children left in the universe. You'll also gain more members to your crew, such as Marin, the last Night Sister left on Dathomir, and BD-1, a companion droid who will provide you with life-saving stims as well as scanning different entities, whether friend, foe, or foliage, to give you a little more insight into the worlds you're traversing. Now that we've got that quick summary out of the way, let's get into talking about some more detailed parts of the game. Starting with the planets and story. As I said earlier, there are 8 planets in total, but only 5 you can actually explore, so I'm only going to talk about those today. In Fallen Order, you can visit Bogano, Zepho, Dathomir, Kashyyyk, and Ilum. All of these planets are explorable to a certain degree, with Zepho being by far the most explorable. Now, the exploration experience is mostly enjoyable. For the most part, I didn't have any difficulty traversing around the different planets, though there were a couple of times where the game wasn't as intuitive as I would have liked. Of course, this applies to the combat as well, but we'll get to that later. The game does give you a choice at one point as to which of 2 planets you want to go to first, which I thought was a cool concept. That is until you learn that you actually can't get very far into one of the planets without first going through the story on the other planet. So, cool concept, disappointing execution. The storyline was fairly enjoyable, with my only real complaint against it being that it's so short. I think the game does a great job flowing through from planet to planet and enemy to enemy, except for that brief moment where you randomly get kidnapped by some bounty hunters, but that's not unusual in Star Wars storytelling. Looking at you, Cantabite. The problem arises when the game suddenly reaches its climax, quite prematurely. I specifically remember thinking I was probably around halfway through the game once I journeyed to Ilum, but as I soon found out, I was actually about 80 to 90% of the way through the storyline. The game seemed very well set up for a much longer story than it contained, and that was severely disappointing. Obviously though, if your story's main problem is that it's not long enough, it's a pretty good problem to have. Now, let's discuss the topic of combat and gameplay. I also don't have that many complaints here, though I do have a couple more than I did with the story. Every article or video I ever saw that talked about this game's combat seemed to be obligated by law to mention how it was a Souls-like combat system. Now, I'm going to admit to a cardinal sin here, but I've never played a Dark Souls game. Now, before you get mad, it's not out of disinterest, it's more so out of lack of funds. I will definitely get around to them one day though. Hopefully, if this series does well enough, I can make some episodes about them in the future, because if this game truly has Souls-like combat, then I am all for it. The combat in this game felt smooth, it felt good to play. There were definitely times where it wasn't quite intuitive or just didn't make sense, but they were just outweighed by the amazing experience of using the Force to throw a rocket back at a stormtrooper, which may be one of my favorite things ever. Where I have more of a problem with the gameplay is with the movement and the exploring side of the game. I had countless times where I would end up trying to make a jump for 30 minutes, only to find it's not the right place to go, and the actual way is hidden in some extraordinarily unnecessary way. Now, I try not to use online guides much when I'm playing or completing games, but if I'm truly stumped, as I was a dozen or 2 times in this game, I'm not going to go insane trying to figure it out on my own. A lot of the fights with the mid to late game bosses also felt a bit too unpredictable and random, especially the penultimate fight. Now, I understand wanting to make your bosses difficult. In fact, I'm all for it. There's barely anything that I like more than the feeling of accomplishment you get when you finally beat that super difficult boss, but I also believe that you can make them difficult while still allowing their movements and attack patterns to be learned, so you can develop a strategy around them. Just as random doesn't always equal funny, it also doesn't equal good, difficult bosses. As far as completion experience goes, it was fine. It wasn't anything truly special, but it also wasn't a bad experience. You get the added bonuses of more health, more force, stamina, and all of the cosmetics you could ever want. And for once, EA didn't put them behind a paywall. Well, not all of them anyway. But while collecting all of the cosmetics was easy enough, where I found most of my frustration lies in one achievement, and one thing that was added later. So, one of the achievements in the game requires you to reach 100% exploration on all of BD1's holomaps, which should be easy, because the game shows you where you haven't explored yet, right? Wrong. It shows you the major places you haven't explored yet, but that percentage also includes the nooks and crannies, some of which are impossible to find without the help of a guide. How the people in the guides even found them is beyond me, but I'm thankful they did, because if they hadn't, then I wouldn't have been able to complete this game. The other thing that frustrated me beyond belief is something that fortunately came out after I completed the game, because I wasn't able to complete it. I didn't count this as one of the requirements since I already finished the game beforehand, and after seeing how difficult it would be, I knew I couldn't beat it without quitting my job, shunning my friends and family, and becoming a slave to the game. This, of course, is the combat challenges. Fallen Order's own survival mode where you have to fend off waves of enemies. Another cool concept, but another incredibly disappointing and infuriating execution. Now, the challenges themselves wouldn't be too bad if you just had to beat them. But you can get 3 stars per challenge, and to get all 3 stars, you have to fend off all of the enemies without taking damage, which is incredibly hard to do when sometimes Cal will just roll into the enemies because he's an idiot and the worst Jedi of all time. Sorry, I just had to vent about that for a second, but yeah, those were definitely the 2 most frustrating parts of this game. I'd say overall, they're pretty equally frustrating in my eyes. One is easily solvable, the other made me want to chuck my controller through the wall, so yeah, even. All around, this game is solid. There's nothing that makes it incredibly special, but there's also nothing that makes it unplayable. When it comes down to it, I honestly believe that the pros far outweigh the cons that I noticed in this game. Now, we must place the inaugural Way Too Late Reviews game in its rightful ranking. As I've already said, I think this game is great, definitely the best Star Wars game EA has put out so far on their license. However, it's clearly not perfect. There are a few, albeit not super noticeable, flaws in the gameplay, and the story is so much shorter than it should be for a $60 AAA title. Therefore, I think this game is fine to purchase on sale, or if you don't care about playtime and are just looking for a fun gameplay experience that's not going to take 80 to 100 hours to play through, this game is a good choice. So, with no further ado, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order gets placed in a solid A tier. Very good game, not quite perfect. Just don't do the combat challenges unless you're a masochist. Thank you for watching Way Too Late Reviews. If you'd like to know when the next episode comes out, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below and make sure to turn on notifications if you want to know the exact moment it comes out. I will be hopefully making at least one of these reviews a month, so expect that at the very least. Other than that, leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.